the OP1 8K from Endgame Gear.
The Endgame Gear OP1 8K.
This is the OP1 8K by Endgame Gear.
Endgame Gear's OP1 8K.
Today we're going to be looking at the OP1 8K from Endgame Gear. So the main question is a wired mouse even viable in 2024? I mean, we've had so many good wireless mice of 2023 and 2024 that going back to a wired mouse kind of seems crazy, but I think this one might be a game changer. First off, wired versus wireless stability. Comparing this 8K polling rate wired mouse to something like the Superlight 2, which just received a firmware update to allow 8K polling, how does it compare over a wired versus wireless signal? Taking a look at some of these graphs that I measured from both the OP1 8K wired and the Superlight 2 wireless mice, you can see that the Superlight 2 had quite a few spikes in input latency on these graphs. Now, whether or not these are humanly noticeable, I'm still unsure of, because some of these are sub 1 millisecond response times, and the spikes only go up to like a millisecond or 1.5 milliseconds. So in a real-world gaming scenario, I'm not entirely sure it's going to make too much of a difference. But stability is always key, especially considering the fact that the Superlight 2 is almost double the price of this Endgame OP1 8K gaming mouse. Considering the price differences on these two mice, as well as the instability on the more expensive option, I'll leave that up to you guys on whether or not wireless is truly worth it in this scenario. Leading into another downside about 8K polling rate and wireless mice, when I set my Superlight 2 to 8K polling rate for the first time after that firmware update and saw that at 100% I'd only get around 20 hours of battery life, I realized I was going to be needing to charge this mouse about once a week or once every couple of days depending on the gaming sessions and the duration of the gaming sessions. Whether or not it's productivity, mixed gaming usage, or full-on gaming, leaving the Superlight 2 as an example at 8K polling on a wireless signal is going to cause both instabilities and terrible battery life. One major concern of mine when I first picked up a wired gaming mouse this year was, am I going to notice the cable after all of this time using wireless gaming mice for so many years? I can confidently report back that from my experience using a Zowie mouse bungee and a glass mouse pad, there is zero friction from the cable. I don't notice it at all. In fact, when I'm in a gaming session focused on the game itself, I can't even notice that there's a cable there. It does depend on your setup though, because you might be using a mouse bungee, you might be taping the cable to the back of your monitor, or you might even be letting the cable just fall right off the desk and drag along the edge of the desk. You may also be using a certain type of cloth mouse pad or a glass mouse pad that might result in more friction. One thing I did notice about the OP1 8K is it makes the Superlight 2 feel like a brick. The OP1 8K hovers around 50 grams while the Superlight 2 is at 60 grams. I don't know if this is because of build quality, construction materials in the mice, or even the battery being in the Superlight 2. But the OP1 8K with zero battery and a super lightweight shell makes me literally feel like I'm playing with air. Not to mention the fact that I can use the OP1 8K at 8K polling rate forever without ever needing to charge. I'm going to pass the mic over to my co-host Danny so he can talk about switching switches.
Something I like about what Endgame Gear did was allowing the switches to be hot swappable. This means no soldering or anything crazy. Endgame Gear sells 8 different switches, each with varying click force. I personally went with the 50 to 55 gram ones, and they feel amazing. Taking the mouse apart, you have 3 connectors for your left, right, and side buttons. You only need to unplug 2 and undo 4 screws to change the left and right switches. This allows for easy customization for personal preference. Typically, in a regular switch, you push down on this keystroke, which forces a metal strip down and hits a metal contact. Endgame Gear and KL's switch design added a second contact point, so the moment the metal strip releases, it's registered as a click, potentially saving a few milliseconds. In Endgame Gear's software, they have what they call their SPDT switch setup. You can choose between low latency GX speed mode or the more secure GX safe mode. This is to choose between which contact point you want to be registered. This allows for extremely low click latency compared to other mice on the market. Endgame Gear looked at a different approach for their shape. Taking inspiration from their XM1, they decided to make it thinner, instead of downscaling the mouse 1:1, or just shrinking it vertically, making it too wide for some hands. This is so users with large or small hands can use it. In my opinion, they really nailed the balance between comfort and performance. It's got this slightly raised hump, which is perfect for claw or fingertip grips, but it's not too aggressive. The back flare is just enough to give you some solid palm support without feeling too bulky.